We'll kick off the day hearing from some of our students. Keagan, I see you there. If you want to go ahead and start.
Certainly. Good morning, everyone. My name is Keagan Ringling, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Alissa Jansma and Alissa Perteet-Jackson. First of all, we really want to thank you all for joining our showcase. And it's our pleasure to introduce to you the second day of our Food Science Nutrition Department Showcase. I think we all can agree that it's an unprecedented time in our history. Clearly, we're all adjusting to new norms, socially, academically, economically, and certainly physically. While this time has been a learning experience for all of us, our department has remained nimble in adjusting to the current situation and is committed to moving forward and to evolving to meet future challenges throughout the food system through both cutting-edge research and training. We've strived to demonstrate this commitment with our showcase. Yesterday, we first heard from our student organizations and discussed ongoing student-driven initiatives throughout the department and the college, and many of these initiatives are having tangible impacts on our local food system. Then our advisory council convened to kick off their new engagement. Following this, I had the privilege of sitting down with our faculty members, Craig Hassel and Georgia Knorr, to discuss the role of our department in a changing food system, and also to discuss how we can position ourselves for increasing leadership opportunities. We were then honored to have President Gable address our department and to discuss how our department can contribute to meaningful food systems change. We were then honored that Dean Brian Burr and community leader Elder Atum Azahir could join our department head, Job Ubbink, along with alumni Dave Pasco and former dean and department head Al Levine, in discussing the role of nutrition in cultures and communities and opportunities to better serve these communities. Finally, Elder Atum and Craig Hassel spotlighted current community-driven nutrition and health initiatives in South Minneapolis. Today, we will hear from even more faculty about current research and outreach initiatives. Then we will discuss the needs and leadership skills required for the future food systems workforce. We will then have an open discussion about opportunities to best position our department to address emerging needs and trends throughout the food system. My colleagues Melissa and Alissa will provide further context for these initiatives.
Innovating together to improve health through food is the Department of Food Science and Nutrition's vision statement. In 2016, 4 signature key areas, SKAs, were developed to help leverage research, outreach, and education. The priorities include building focused, flexible, signature areas of expertise and departmentally led strategic initiatives that produce knowledge and benefit the social good. Foster an organization culture of collaboration, innovation, entrepreneurship, and shared leadership. Offer high quality undergraduate and graduate education that meets the needs of the 21st century employer and society. And finally, upgrade equipment, facilities, and technology to fulfill the mission of research and outreach. The goals and the objectives outlined in the SKA define the necessary steps to help realize the vision of our department.
Today, you will hear panelists discuss how they are contributing to the department's collaboration, innovation, undergraduate and graduate education, and attention to wicked problems that require interdisciplinary research and outreach. We will engage in meaningful conversation about the ways we can educate students to build capacity to help solve the 21st century wicked problems. Please join us later this morning for an open discussion about how to address these problems. Thank you.
We do have time if anybody would like to put some questions in the chat about the review of yesterday, if you missed a session or two, or if you have any questions about what's coming up today. The next session will start in 4 minutes. Thank you all for joining us this morning.
So we keep online, I assume, or do we're being promoted to panelists, some of us, and so it's extra 4 minutes. Maybe I can say a few words on my side. I must say thanks very much to Melissa, Keagan, and Alissa, Alissa and Keagan for their nice introduction of our mission statement, our SKAs, and the also yesterday's sessions, which was with an orientation also in a community setting. And today overall we'll go some other very, very important areas for our department. We'll initially have a session on the more research-oriented initiatives. And there I also really would like to now take maybe a moment to point out that we have a really nice website with also virtual poster sessions. So please have a look. They're great videos, virtual posters by our grad students. The number is still growing. We'll keep it going for the, I think for a long time that we have that as a platform. So to disseminate the work, the research, the concrete research that our students, specifically our graduate students in food science and nutrition are engaged in. So this is an integral part of the showcase. And really go there. You'll get really fascinating insights in the actual research that we are doing in our department. And if there are any, Therese, would you mind if I say a few more words? But I would also like to give the floor to anybody else to chime in and bring up questions or remarks. If not, maybe a quick view of what we're going to do today. It's the second day of our showcase, fully virtual. Works out very well, as we've seen also yesterday. I'm very happy for also the technical support that we have to manage this complex process. So we'll start with a session on the more research initiatives, but with a unique edge to it that we're not going into concrete research results. You'll find them, for instance, in these virtual poster sessions, but we'll be asking 3 of our faculty, our professors, about what inspires them, what gave them their motivation and the idea to engage in certain types of research, and how it's been transformational for them, for their stakeholders, also for them as a person and as a scholars. So that will be I must say, I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. And then with Very Others initiative, looking today very much also at the what we would need to do on the side of the education and the training next to the disciplinary activities. So where you really get your core courses in food science and nutrition, but what else will be needed for the current graduate to be successful in the job market, for a career, to engage with society, to be active in companies. And we have a session which is moderated by Tonya Schoenfuss with colleagues from Applied Economics about more the business, the entrepreneurial aspects of food and nutrition. How can you create a business model out of it? How can that be sustainably grown? How do you make that work in this changing dynamics of the food system? So what are the potentials there? And what we see is that in the food industry, we see a major change. We have big industry, major industry, which is still thriving. But next to that, a lot of innovation happening, also smaller companies that are driven by, desires to change lifestyle or connect to certain community-based research initiatives, fitting with certain type of, groups in our population that might be a gender or age or an orientation, or people wanting to engage in sports, et cetera, or health-driven initiatives. So there's a lot of initiatives taking place where actually our knowledge and our experience in food science and nutrition could really benefit enormously.
Thank you for that framing, Dr. Ubbink, and I'd like to usher in the next group and encourage all of the students that are tuning in to really look for what's relevant to you, what you can find in what's presented today to help you get excited about your academic career and where it will take you.
Yes,
I will turn that over to the first group of faculty here.
Yes. Thank you. And actually, I'm the moderator, the facilitator of this session. I'm delighted that I have my colleagues, Mindy Kurzer, Pam Ismail and Moon-Suhn Ryu present as representing the food science and nutrition faculty with various profiles, various research interests, various trajectories throughout their careers. And I really would like to engage in a conversation with Mindy, Pam, and Moon-Suhn about what inspired them, what triggered them to undertake their current research initiatives. And we all know that Mindy is heading the Healthy Food, Healthy Lives Institute. Pam launched a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, the Plant Protein Innovation Center. And Moon-Suhn comes from the perspective of molecular sciences and really starts to apply those insights in the critical area of mineral nutrition. But you know, these are very important initiatives, very important research directions, but they just don't emerge out of the blue sky. They're based on a history and a personal engagement and insights and motivations. So I would like to ask our three professors 2 questions. First, what did inspire you to actually, and what did you set you up to actually engage in your current research and your scholarship? And what would be your dreamed outcome? You know, what's the impact in 5 years and 10 years if everything goes as you plan, or what do you expect that the impact will be? But first, I'd like to ask our 3 professors for a brief introduction of themselves, each a couple of minutes. I will start with Mindy, then ask Pam, and then ask Moon-Suhn, maybe 2 or 3 minutes about who you are, what you're doing, where you're coming from. And then in a combined session, in a conversation, we'll address these 2 questions. Mindy, could I ask you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation to join this panel. I'm extremely delighted to be here. As Job said, I'm director of the Healthy Food, Healthy Lives Institute. This institute started in 2008 as a result of a University of Minnesota presidential initiative. And the purpose of the institute is to enhance the work already being done at the university, the great work in the area of food and health. And we have a particular interest, because of where we're housed in CFANS, to bring together agriculture and medicine across disciplines. And we use a systems approach. So we're very interested in where in the food system, from production through distribution and consumption, can we intervene to improve people's health? And so we're looking at the whole system from a very interdisciplinary perspective. Our priority areas are food safety, prevention of obesity and chronic disease, food security, and food policy. And we do a number of different things. We have grant programs for faculty, for students, and for faculty community collaborations. We have an annual symposium on the topic of food and health, and we host a symposium on Native American nutrition. In addition, we have received external funding to do a number of things, including help develop the Minnesota Food Charter, which is a document reflecting the statements of the people of Minnesota. 1,000 people were contacted and consulted for that on what will be needed to assure a safe, healthy, affordable food for everybody in Minnesota. So we do many things in Healthy Food, Healthy Lives, and everything we do is interdisciplinary. We bring people from virtually every unit in the university into the work that we do. So that's my primary focus these days. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mindy. Pam, could I invite you for a quick introduction?
Sure. Thank you, Job. And I would like to thank everybody that joining us this morning. And again, like Mindy, I appreciate the invite. And I'm very happy to be here and give you a glimpse of what we're doing. So I'm a faculty here at the University of Minnesota for about 13 years now. And about a couple of years ago, I had a lot of discussion with the industry, and the trend of interest in proteins became too large, and interest from consumers, from the industry, from farmers, sustainable agriculture. So similar to the Healthy Foods, Healthy Lives, is we are trying to link the desire of the consumer for a healthy diet, for sustainable agriculture, and also for industry and benefits and farmers' benefits. So we're trying to make that link. And with a lot of conversation, a lot of stakeholders, I figured out that there is a need for a platform where we can bring people together, whether it is whether these people are researchers or consumers or industry, just come together for a particular purpose focused on proteins. So our mission for the center is really to bring diverse, again, the interdisciplinary aspect is huge for the center as well, where we are striving to bring scientists across the fields, whether it is in food science or agriculture, breeding, genetics, agronomy, marketing, economics. So all of the different fields, how we can bring the new plant protein sources, nutritional, functional, flavorful new sources that we can introduce to the consumer, to the industry, and also with the big point in mind, which is sustainable agriculture and feeding the growing population. So our research really focuses on aspects over the entire value chain, starting from production on the land to processing, formulation, and marketing, and all the way to the consumer. So this is a kind of a glimpse of what we do. We have a lot of research priorities, but these research priorities stem from the need that we hear from our stakeholders. What are the consumers looking for in terms of food and health, and also that awareness of the environment? What is the industry doing to address the need of these consumers? Where are the opportunities? Where are the challenges? And we're here to address that.
Thank you, Pam. Moon-Suhn, could I invite you for an introduction of your what you're engaged in?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Again, as everyone else, this is a great honor to be a part of this great session, of this great showcase. I think it's a very exciting event, and it's exciting to be a part of it. So I'm Moon-Suhn Ryu. I joined the department actually fairly recently, 2017. So I don't have my own center to talk about, but I'm starting to establish a sort of way to develop one. I have been trained, as Job mentioned, as a molecular nutritionist. So my training is very focused, and what we do in the laboratory could be defined as very micro or molecular. However, my research program focuses on zinc and iron, two primary micronutrients. We try to not only understand or discover new genetic or molecular mechanisms, but also try to establish ways to identify, translate our knowledge or findings to real settings, including clinical settings. And lately, we actually started to collaborate with animal scientists to see how our findings can be useful in animal food production, particularly for the farming of pigs. So we do have this really micro approach in doing research, but the goal for our studies are really at the systemic level where we can improve not only our health, but the entire system. That would be it. Thank you.
So it seems like Job is having some issues.
I think
It looks like his, yeah, it looks like we have a message that he'll rejoin shortly when he regains computer.
Okay. So I think the first question that Job wanted to ask us was about what inspired us to do this kind of work. So maybe I'll just take the initiative and start and give my answer. I spent the first 25 plus years of my career doing clinical studies, looking at the effects of the mechanisms by which dietary constituents may reduce cancer in people. So it was a lot of work on dietary supplements and dietary constituents like soy protein, which has had a lot of overlap with Pam's interest. And I had immense fun. I loved it. I trained a lot of students. I thought it was really great work. But I realized that the big problems that we're experiencing that relate to food and health, the wicked problems, as one of the students said before, have not been solved using some of the narrow approaches that we've used. So if you take an example like obesity, researchers have been working on obesity prevention and obesity treatment for 50, 60 years plus. And where are we with all the millions of dollars, possibly billions that's gone into that? Have we really made the kind of progress that that investment would justify? And the answer, I think, is really no. And so I started realizing a number of years ago that it probably will take other minds coming into this discussion, other perspectives, other viewpoints, not the same old people doing molecular work and clinical work and those of us trained in nutrition or biochemistry, but maybe we need civil engineers, and maybe we need physicists, and maybe we need behavioral scientists. I realized that I could do all the greatest work in the world, and all of us could, to identify what the healthiest diet is. And we can tell people that, but there are a million reasons why they won't consume it. And a lot of it has to do with psychology and culture and other effects on behavior. And so we could do fantastic work, but actually have no impact. And this really concerned me and made me realize that we needed to bring other people into the discussions. And I recognized the importance of behavioral science, social science in all of this, and in a way that I had not been trained to appreciate it. And so when I had the opportunity to help lead the Healthy Food, Healthy Lives Institute, it was really an opportune moment for me to do something that would allow me to help pull together people from across the university, to pull together the university with the communities outside in order to get more brain power, looking at things from different angles in order to try to solve some of these problems. And in fact, I feel like this, at this point, after I've been at the university for over 30 years, that this work will probably wind up having the greatest impact of anything that I've done in my career, including all of the NIH-funded clinical studies that I've done, which have incrementally increased knowledge, and I think that that's been very valuable. But the kind of work that I'm doing now, which involves, as I said, helping networking, knowing who's doing what, bringing people together to think about things in different ways, I think is really the only way forward. And using a systems approach and an interdisciplinary approach is the only way that we're going to solve some of these big problems. That's my inspiration. Job, you need to unmute yourself.
I pressed the button. Yes, it's a terrific inspiration. So thank you for sharing. I must also realize that I'm actually superfluous here. The discussion goes really well, so I can just sit back and learn. But let me actually ask Pam. And Pam, actually, when I came in as a department head last year, said there was always an interest in protein chemistry in the food science arena, but it was a steady interest, and she's recently seen it exploding. And I really want to learn from her how it is to be in that area. It suddenly explodes. How do you react to that? How do you deal with that? I know that your calendar is booked from Monday morning till Friday evening late, and probably you do have much more work even beyond that. But how do you experience that? But suddenly an area takes off.
Well, thank you, Job. Yes, I simply found myself in the right discipline at the right time, and I just got super inspired and super excited. I'm a person that gets inspired very easily, so you can imagine how it exploded to me when I saw my core interest became really main domain in the field. So so I get inspired. I got definitely inspired and excited about that. I started working on proteins as young as 21 years of age when I started my master's. So, and it continued with me. I did a lot of analytical chemistry work, but always the focus was proteins. So, so I got inspired by that, by the trends, by the consumers, by the students, the young students, whether they are undergraduates or graduate students, they are now seeking research in relevant areas. They're aware of the environment. They're aware of the sustainable agriculture. They seek us to study in this space, which is really inspiring to see that these young 18, 19 years old coming to us, telling us, I want to research this topic. So this is inspiring to me. And also the drive of the sustainable agriculture and the drive of the farmers to get benefit of sustainable agriculture, because their crops need to get value to be sold. So if they benefit the environment, they also want to be benefiting economically too. So with the consumer asking for new plant sources of protein, and with the population growing, and with the industry exploding and wanting to lead in this space, so it's all coming together. So I really thought that we really need to get these minds from the different disciplines together to address this kind of a global need and interdisciplinary need, whether we're talking about farmers, or we're talking about industry, or we're talking about consumers, or we're talking about students that we want to educate to become our next scientists. So it's kind of a circle from the beginning to the end, and we go back again. So I find all of this inspiring from all perspectives. And like Mindy said, the diversity of the minds is what we are hoping to achieve by having a platform where people from different disciplines can come together, innovate, research, provide education, not education only to our students, but also education to the consumer, because there are a lot of wrong information out there. So what's our duty as an educational institution, research institution, is also to educate the consumer and the stakeholders, whoever they are, not just our students. So yeah, I find that super exciting. It kind of drives me, although it wakes me up at 3 a.m. in the morning, but I'm driven. And I love what I do, and I love working with students, with industry, with researchers. I learn every day. We stop learning when we don't. So I appreciate that so much.
And I can just testify to that, because as soon as I came in, I was recruited into the PPIC, and we're going to extrude plant proteins. So I must say, I really feel privileged to be a department head, but I'm also very much looking forward. We're actually starting our project very soon where we'll start doing that. So that's very, very exciting. So I can testify myself that Pam is really driven and very convincing. So, and I'm looking forward to collaborate in these projects. Then I'd like to go to Moon-Suhn. Actually, what I'll do there, actually ask Moon-Suhn to reflect about that first question. So what inspired you, what brought you into this field? And then actually we go back, and then also immediately you can comment on what would you see as your impact on the field in 5 years, 10 years time, in your dreams. What will be your ideal impact of your work? So if you could maybe combine back, and then we'll go back over Pam, and then in 10 minutes we wrap it up with Mindy.
Sure.
Moon-Suhn.
Yeah. I'm pretty much like Pam, I think. I get readily inspired by things. And if I first answer your last question, what's my goal for the next 5 years and what do I want to achieve? There are just too many things, but I'll revisit this later on. So how I got inspired and developed my current research initiative that I want to maintain throughout my research career, I think it really goes back to the time when it really started when I was an undergraduate student. So I think our audience, we have a lot of students here, and I hope you can get something out of my experiences. But when I was in college, I was a very shy, quiet student, learned things from books primarily. And then I graduated with a degree, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. But I eventually joined a food company. There, I was able to interact with people because I was in the international business team, primarily because I was able to speak in English. So there, I really learned how to network with people. And I think Mindy used the word networking and put some emphasis on how it is important for her current program. I think it's really important for almost everything nowadays, because you need to learn how to communicate with people, learn things, and only through those real learnings outside of the book, you can develop a good thought that can lead to for me, would be a research initiative. Then I noticed that I was getting into developing real interest in pursuing science, but I wanted to do something more applicable and that can deliver impact to the field or community. And I identified nutrition as something like that. But I had to serve for the military, so I had this experience in industry and military, and then came to the US for my education. I was trained to be a molecular scientist, yes, and then I gained my expertise in science. And then, however, after 6 years of graduate school, I didn't yet know what I wanted to do with the scientific skills that I developed. So I reached out to many different places and then had the opportunity to serve for a policy fellow, scientific policy fellow in Washington, D.C., where I learned that scientists not only are expected to do research or science, but actually change the community by contributing to policies, for instance, or making recommendations to policymakers, for instance. So then I found, okay, this is what I probably want to do, but of course I was too young to really make good recommendations. I wanted to do more training. I did my postdoctoral research and then came to the University of Minnesota. I find this place as a really fascinating, especially being a part of CFANS is fascinating because I can have the opportunity not to only network with people who are molecular people or nutritional scientists, but also I get to talk with food scientists and animal scientists, agriculture. There are very many things that you can learn by interacting with people. And I think what really formed my current research initiative is a combination of what I gained through the interaction with people inside our current network. And I'm trying to expand this network by reaching out to industry and the clinical, the medical center on the Minneapolis side. And I hope I can do something, accomplish something like Pam and Mindy did throughout their career at the UU. And I actually very much look forward to it.
Thank you. We as well, Alissa. I think that sounds very exciting. Thank you for sharing your personal story with all these elements, how they come together. That's fascinating. I'm actually going back to Pam, and then finally with Mindy, maybe 2-3 minutes per topic. What do you see as your impact in 5 years, in 10 years? You know, what's your dream?
Yeah, my dream is for our research and the Plant Protein Innovation Center in particular that I've initiated is to become a platform for knowledge, for networking, and also education and innovation. So I would like to see that platform across the university and external to the university and international as well to kind of inspire young generations and also make an impact on the environment. When we're looking at plant protein sources for sustainable agriculture, I would like to see an impact on the environment and how we are producing enough food in a reasonable manner that preserve our land and our society. So that's one thing. I would like to see the impact. The dream also is the health of the consumer. The diseases associated with obesity and diet. How can we implement new and nutritious type of foods that will eventually impact the consumer in a healthy way? The farmers, we need to also, these are the farmers, they're feeding us. So I would like to see an impact on our farmers. And again, not to forget the prosperity of our industry. So they are big stakeholders as well. So we're thinking about the consumers, we're thinking about the farmers, we're thinking about the industry, and also our students. As academician, I would like to see our students are ready to embark on very important trend in our lives right now.
Sorry, I'm mute again, my apologies. Thank you, Pam. And then I'm circling back to Mindy. Mindy, your dream. Now you're on mute, Mindy.
Thank you. My dream is that the Healthy Food, Healthy Lives Institute helps contribute to changing the culture at the University of Minnesota so that people more widely appreciate a systems approach and interdisciplinary approach to doing research. We've been too in our silos, reductionistic. When I was trained in nutrition 40 years ago, people who did basic science had absolutely no appreciation for anyone who did anything clinical or with humans. That wasn't real science. And people who did clinical work with humans did not appreciate community nutrition. That's not really science. That's like social. The word science is in there, but it's not really science. And of course, nobody understood extension. That was really not something that was appreciated. So now I think that the culture is changing so that there's much more appreciation for multiple ways of doing research, that they all have a place, that different disciplines can appreciate each other, and that they have a contribution. And so I hope that we can help contribute to that point of view. The other thing is that I hope that we are able to help establish real mutual, equal collaborations between university faculty members and communities. You know that historically, and this was discussed yesterday to some degree, historically there has been very poor relationships, and I hope that we can help develop that. The last thing I'll say is that one of the things I need to talk to Pam about is that we've had a difficult time bringing industry into the conversation, and I believe, and the Healthy Food, Healthy Lives Institute believes, that industry has to be part of the solution. That what people sometimes call big food or big ag is not going away, and that they can be part of the solution. But the problem that we have is that many people in public health who are involved with Healthy Food, Healthy Lives to a great degree, some of those folks are very anti-blaming industry. And therefore, although we've had funding from both Cargill and General Mills for particular projects, industry has been a little bit frightened to get into the conversations for fear of being blamed for the problems, as opposed to engaged as partners. And so that's something that I hope that we can help happen too. And I need to talk to Pam to get some advice about how we can work together to do that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. It's that I must say also that perspective where we actually still really have to work and also manage these relations and expectations, and accepting that we have a food system, and that also things carry over, and actually they bring important things to the table is very important. I'm actually getting in one question from the audience, and actually it links actually what Mindy's talking about to, and the question I'm going to direct to Pam, and I'm just reading it is. I was just going to ask Pam about industry. Do you think they have the same ideas as you do in terms of supporting sustainable, regenerative agriculture and farmers?
Absolutely. Actually, there's a lot of interest in this area, and they're actually promoting some of the work they're doing towards sustainable agriculture. So big companies, I don't want to name names right now, but big companies in their mission statement, they are addressing the need to go towards sustainable agriculture, and they're trying to source their ingredients, and whatever, if they're starting from a crop or starting from ingredient, they're trying to source sustainably grown sources, basically. So yes, they're starting to see that because the consumer is calling for that. So they are definitely there, and also they're there with they understand the consumer's fear and the health scientists' fear of blaming the industry. So they also understand that point very well, and there are some of them are really trying to take steps to gain trust. To also enlighten the consumer, because there's also a lot of stereotyping as well about the processing and the ingredients. So they're trying to do efforts educating the consumers, as well as taking a step back and looking at what caused that mistrust.
Thank you. I must say that's actually a nice wrap up. I think we're actually at time. I was on the verge of asking for one more question. I don't see anything in the chat box. We're at 9:40, which should be actually the moment to transfer it over to the next group. I just like to thank our three panelists for their outstanding contribution and their engagement. And it's one of the reasons I'm so excited to be at the University of Minnesota to see this research initiative that are really rooted in actual problems and driven into the world-class science that President Gabel was mentioning yesterday. And I'm really excited to be a part of that. Thank you for all your participation, and also everybody listening in. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to usher us over to Tonya Schoenfuss right now to introduce the next group.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And for our topic today, we're going to be talking about creating business opportunities that can help businesses and also help with food security via our department, both food science and nutrition, and also in conjunction with the Department of Applied Econ. So we're fortunate today to have 3 members from the Department of Applied Econ with us. My name's Tonya Schoenfuss, if you don't know me. So I'm a professor in the department. I teach food quality, product development, food safety class, ingredient functionality. And I also have a couple other roles with centers. So I'm the interim director for the Midwest Dairy Foods Research Center, and I'm the faculty advisor for the Joe Warthison Food Processing Center, which is also just known as the pilot plant. And so that's where we really, as a department, do help a lot of entrepreneurs as they're coming through developing food products or developing new ingredients. So I'd like to pass it off to our panelists today to give their introductions and background about their research in applied econ. So we have Mike Boland, Hikaru Peterson, and Jolleen Hadrich, and I'm not sure who would like to go first. Mike, maybe, would you like to start?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Is my audio working okay, Tanya?
Yep.
So maybe as a self-introduction, I teach over I'm an agricultural economist working over in applied economics in Rattan Hall. And I've got a interdisciplinary graduate level course. So one of the ways that we collaborate across departments, such as food science from ours, is on the graduate student education phase. So we've got an introductory course that we teach with the Carlson School of Management, the School of Public Health, the Humphrey Institute, and CFANS, and graduate students can take this course. It's an introduction to the food and agribusiness marketplace. It's a 2-credit class. It's taught in Carlson when we're on campus, I should say. I suspect next springtime we'll be doing it online via Zoom. But we typically have 24 to 27 students, about 1/3 from CFANS and 2/3 from supply chain and the MBA program. And so a number of food science students have taken the course. The course was started because a lot of our CFANS master's programs require 2 courses outside the departmental major. And so sometimes students are looking for some electives, and we've got a course now that's kind of a nice, we bring an industry speaker every night, and then it's kind of a directed discussion. We've got topics every 10, 15 minutes. We switch topics throughout the food system. There's a 3rd credit, so there's a 2-credit class because the supply chain and MBA students take minis, 2-credit courses, whereas CFANS would take 3. So the 3rd credit, we've got a week-long study tour of Minnesota businesses. We work with the Global Food Ventures program through MnDrive, and those annual fellows, when their program is funded, do this. And so we go out and let them see the lab, the bakery lab, for example, at Land O'Lakes, or General Mills, the Bell Lab, and so forth. So that's one way we collaborate across departments on graduate education. We also have a minor in our graduate program, and Hikaru will talk about her course, but we've got a couple classes that are food policy focused that make it a nice minor for students. So a lot of the work that I've done is kind of all over the place, was basically focused on graduate student interest. And I'll stop there and keep my introduction short and turn it over to Jolleen, I guess, if we'll go in alphabetical order here.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So I am Jolleen Hadrich. I am associate professor in the Department of Applied Economics, but I also have a majority appointment in the College of Extension, and I'm an extension specialist. So what that means is I work with farmers across the state, looking at their finances and finding ways for them to maintain or improve their profitability as new constraints are imposed on them. And this works really well collaborating across CFANS as well as within CVM as well. A lot of times what we're looking at, for example, is pennycress is something that we're hearing a lot about as a potential input in a variety of different processing systems. So I worked with a student who will be talking later, or who has already talked, Keagan Ringling, about ways to make this financially feasible for farmers to adopt. How it's currently priced, it's not at a place that will help farmers maintain or improve their profitability, it would actually decrease it. So we're trying to find ways along that food system supply chain where prices can be adjusted so that farmers are not at a disadvantage for meeting these sustainability goals for that processor, as well as to meet the needs of our consumers who are requesting these sustainable products. So this is just an example of what I do as an ag economist. I, like Mike, sort of jump across a variety of projects. I've learned so much about pennycress, camelina, a number of things that I knew nothing about beforehand, which is what makes my job so exciting, because then I'm more informed, and all I'm doing is applying our economic skills to a variety of projects. So it's what makes my job exciting. With that, I'll hand it over to Hikaru.
Sorry, I was scrambling to find my unmute button, and you think that I'm teaching over Zoom, right? Every week. So hello, I'm Hikaru Peterson. I'm in applied economics. I would say that, Jolene, if she's working more on the upstream of the supply chain, I work primarily on the downstream or closer to the consumer side of things. Although, just like Jolene said, that, economics is a study of understanding people's choices. So as long as you are a person and you're making choices, you get to be part of like our research subject. It's really fascinating for me to understand, how people make decisions. I will teach a little bit about my teaching. I currently, right now, I'm teaching 2 classes. One is the introduction to food systems. I actually have not seen too many food science and nutrition students. You're welcome to come, but perhaps maybe you already have an interdisciplinary course that fits into your schedule. I'm not sure. But I do get to cover a lot of food system topics there, inviting guest speakers and really learning from a multiple disciplinary lens on the different issues that we see in our food system. The other class that I teach, I actually get to interact quite frequently with students from the food science and nutrition, which is APEC 4451W, that's concurrently offered with 5451. And where I see the food science nutrition students are the grad students who enroll at that 5,000 level. But we meet together, and it's on food marketing economics. And I think one of the things that's really exciting in that class is that we do marketing studies to understand consumer preferences for food product attributes. And I don't know what you're thinking, as a food scientist, you might be thinking about food attribute in a very particular way, but this could just be about messaging, right? And so if there are things about like the industries or the businesses wants to communicate about their philosophy or about their product, they're actually able to we have the toolkit to assess what the consumers are thinking about and how they would react to it. And so we get to do a hands-on identifying a research question around that, and then building your own survey instrument, get the data back, and we're out for discovery for what we're doing. And so every time I've offered this class, I've always had a few food science nutrition students. They all contacted me at the very beginning. I don't have economics, is that okay? And they all do superbly. We really have a great time, and we really appreciate the viewpoints that they bring to the class. On my research area, I do a couple of the things that I think are related to folks in food science and nutrition is that I'm involved in projects that are looking at behavioral interventions to promote healthy eating, and it's in the context of food shelves, or it's in the context of workplace cafeteria. Of course, that's kind of both of them are struggling because of the COVID situation to continue on. But those are some of the things we're looking at, and I also work with colleagues across campus who are looking into food insecurity on our campus. And so with that, I'll turn it back to Tonya.
Hey, thank you. Remember, if you have any questions for the panelists, please submit them through chat. But I'd like to start with a question for Jolene, because I've actually worked on intermediate wheatgrass and peripherally on the pennycress and camelina, and then Pam Ismail and George Nor in our department have as well. It's really a nice story of how we can interact across the whole campus between the breeding of it, the agronomy, the economics, and the food science side on trying to get this into market. But the question is, how does the complexity of the food system affect decisions farmers make on a day-to-day basis? And then how does this lag time affect their profitability and response to consumer preferences?
Yeah, so this is a great question. This is something that I have worked on with Keagan over the past few years. And one of the unique challenges of something like pennycress or even camelina is that this is a brand new product in the market. So we don't even know how to price it. And that's one of the challenges for processors as well as farmers is, we don't even have a starting point. So one thing that economics allows us to do is we love to make assumptions. So what Keagan and I did is we sat down with the collaborators across the entire project. So like you said, Tonya, the entire system, we're like, what is the one product that is the most similar to pennycress that we could use as a base price? And we identified canola as the best example of how some type of new product got introduced into the system, and then we followed the economics along. So what we first had to do was make sure that the science worked. Once we verified that the science works, now we're figuring out how farmers can adopt it. And this is one of the things that I think is the biggest disconnect with just consumers in general, is that there's a biological process behind everything a farmer does. So that there's at least a 9 to 12 month time lag in every decision that they make. So while they may want to adopt pennycress in the next year, realistically, they're not going to get this up and running on their operation for anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And we're going to see the same type of lag when we're looking at processors. So what our farmers are going to do is they're going to adopt it in incremental steps. They're not going to go from 0 acres of pennycress to 1,000 acres. They might start 50 and go to 100 and see how that's affecting their profitability over that time frame. So it's very much a give and take. The other thing when we're looking at the farm level profitability is the farmers who are adopting these sustainability measures are those farmers that are more nimble. They're the ones who are open to trying new ideas, understanding that they may lose profit at the beginning, but there could be that long-term benefit. And they're working with the people going up in the supply chain to make sure that they're capturing that risk of understanding that long-term benefit.
Well, a follow-up to that then, there seems to be, in order to really jump into it as a farmer, you need to have a market. And so you can't really get a market unless there's industry pull to try to, to want to buy it and to put it into their products. So what do you think the role is for larger agribusiness companies to try to help, expand some of these sustainable crops that are better for the environment? How do you convince them to jump on board with incorporating it into their products or into their product mix, and then also helping with getting things approved, because some things aren't generally recognized as safe yet and maybe can't be used in food yet? How do you, how are we going to get that kind of traction to get that pull from the market side? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm looking at both Hikaru and Mike, and I'm like, if you guys want to chime in, you can. I think some of it's open communication. So we have a great relationship with PepsiCo on campus, and that is what has started a lot of these conversations. So in this instance, when we're talking about pennycress, it is PepsiCo saying, this is a project we want to research. We want to see if it's financially feasible for our company to adopt. So I do think you have to have that active engagement to have that communication going up those processing supply chains. But Mike works with the processors much more than I do. So I'm going to pass it over to him, and maybe he has a better answer than I do.
I think the important thing when you look at these public-private partnerships, because that's really what we're discussing, and that's a lot of what we do in CFANS and other colleges of agriculture across the country, we have to remember that there's multiple solutions sometimes. So PepsiCo lays out a goal that we would like to do something about our plastic bottles and try to develop them in a more green or whatever term you'd like to work with on that. The odds are they're looking at multiple solutions as a way to do this. And so it may be a plant-specific solution, it might be a recyclable type solution, or maybe a combination of all those things. And so I think sometimes our goal is just to take some products and try to do some research. The PepsiCo arrangement that Jolene discussed, I think, is long-term in nature, and so some of those things will get done. We've got a relationship with Schwann's and CFANS and other organizations that we're doing things on. So I think part of our role is, number one, to do the initial testing with the pilot test labs and other things we have on campus. And also remember that there's often going to be multiple solutions. There's not going to be one silver bullet for most things. And so part of our role is also to look at some of the costs and benefits on those multiple solutions to see what's feasible going forward. And so Hikaru might have some thoughts with some of our market plans that the students work on and so forth.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was actually I was distracted about the pennycrest question. And what was the original question? Is it how the agribusinesses how we should work with agribusinesses to promote these sustainable practices?
Yeah, what should we be doing, or what can we do to try to get agribusiness interested so that they're actually putting out, contracts to get these materials? What's missing to try to really get scale to so that the farmers will have a profitable product to sell?
So I think, Jolene and Mike have already talked about this, but I think we are foremost, research is our profession. And so I feel like the best we can do is really, inform the opportunities that are out there. And of course, we would reach out and ask that they're interested in collaborating with us. But I really feel like most successful projects has really been when the businesses or the stakeholders actually come to us and ask. And so even in my course project, it actually works out the best. And I think the students really get excited too when I can bring in a real person from off campus and say that, this is a question that we have. Do you think it's going to work? And the students actually realize, like, wow, real thing is at stake, and you can work on that.
Great. So another question I have then is for all of you. How has your teaching or the courses you offer changed based on feedback from outside, from community groups or from ag industry? Has the applied econ department and offerings, obviously the sustainability class you teach is new, and that's based on, things going on just in general politically, and but are you getting feedback from the community and agribusinesses on what kind of courses you teach or what you should be teaching in the courses?
I think I'll start with that, if you don't mind, Hikaru and Jolene. So the answer for, I think, all of us is yes. I was the agribusiness coordinator several years ago. Our enrollment's gone up, our student credit hours have gone up. But more importantly, I think the way we teach. Hikaru talked a bit about the use of spreadsheets in her courses. Jolene's had a primary extension appointment, but now she's back in the classroom. And so, for example, the course we're teaching that I talked about earlier at the graduate level, that was coming from industry and also coming from a need for our graduate students to do something with more business focus as part of their graduate program. It's fun to see in the classroom when I bring in a speaker, for example, from General Mills, or we go out to the Bell Lab or something, to see the interaction from the MBA students and the MS and supply chain students with our science students, because they're never in courses together at the graduate level. And so a lot of the assignments we do, a lot of the topics we do, typically in that class, we have 42 different topics. If you have told me 5 years ago that I'd be teaching a sustainability part or looking at food labels in an agribusiness course, I would have scratched my head and said that wasn't me, but that's not the case. So I think we've done a lot of things in response to industry. One of the nice things about Zoom we're finding is that it's a lot easier to get speakers to come in for 10 minutes to bring in a topic. It's nice to have them on campus and host them on campus, but that's not always feasible anymore in people's schedules, especially in an urban environment where people are commuting. And so we've done a lot of things, at least in applied economics, I think, to bring people in and listen to industry as we've redone some of our curriculum, and some of the numbers have paid off on that, I think.
Any other comments from the other panelists?
I think Mike really emphasized the fact that our students, I think, learn the economic concepts much more easily when we have these real world examples. So whether it's working with a processor or a local farm, their willingness to share their data with us so that our students can do the analysis really makes our program successful. It gives our students these tangible skills that puts them in high demand on the job market, but it also, you know, creates that network and that camaraderie, that, you know, university relationship with the local businesses. And I think that's really one of the selling points to get students to come to our program, but also to have students from other majors come take our classes as well.
And I also would add that, you know, I take cues from the students as well. I mean, they're the ones who are interested in, you know, making contribution to the industry. And if they ask, like, you know, they want to hear from somebody, or they want to know what kind of issues are relevant, I try to address that, and in that process end up, you know, pulling somebody from the industry or the community to come in and talk and share their experience with the class.
I think the last, maybe one comment I'll add, is the experiential learning activity part of this. So the student club activities, the things the students do, like, you know, if you look at the Minnesota Cup, the entrepreneurial competition every year, probably 15 to 20% of those activities are food related things. Our National Grocery Association competition team typically has students from outside applied economics. We've had a food science student each of the last 2 years on that competition team. The marketing plans that our NAMA group does, you know, the marketing activities that Kara talked about. So we have a lot of experiential activities, I think, in our programs, much more than we did when I came here 10 years ago from Kansas State.
So one thing that we hadn't touched on much yet that I see a lot in our pilot plant is we get a lot of entrepreneurs that we help develop their product. If it's a dairy product, we understand it, but we'll have a lot of contacts from people who are looking for more marketing, you know, labeling, things like that. And AURI is, you know, a partner with us. I'm wondering, does the Department of Applied Economics have people that kind of focus on these entrepreneurial businesses? Is there, can somebody just describe for me, do you have connections and any kind of help for people that are trying to develop a business idea, whether it's from the community or even from Carlson School when they do their business plans? I get a lot of students who show up, knock on my door to ask for help. What does your department have?
We recently had a long-term faculty member retire, Ward Neffstead, who part of his extension point was in business development. He liaisoned with the Minnesota Cup and AUR and others. So right now, I don't know that we have a lot of resources in that area. Typically, you see those resources through extension. And so I think we're weak right now, or lacking in that.
But we're actually starting, Mike, but Jeff actually joined, Jeff Stone. And so I think that's the void that we're trying to fill. We are trying to kind of vamp up that to meet the college-wide needs for entrepreneurial development. And so Jeff Stone just recently joined our faculty, and he is taking over some of the courses that Ward had developed, but also adding more. And he's really, he brings us so much energy and try to trying to work with, across campus to meet those entrepreneurial needs. And I think our niche is really to contributing to the food and agricultural opportunities.
Okay, so I'm looking to see, we have some in the chat box, we have connections then over to some of the presentations on pennycress and then, the forever green crops, because like I said, this was is a really great connection, campus wide among the faculty. So that's a really great thing to check out if you're interested in some of those forever green crops. And intermediate wheatgrass is kind of the one that's furthest along and that you might actually have a chance to see. I did have a comment for the Applied Econ class, Value-Added Entrepreneurship in Food, Ag and Natural Resource Sciences. So that's a new class. Are any of the panelists involved in that class?
So that's actually one of the class. So Jeff's last name is Stamp, and Jeff is actually an alum from your guys' program. So Jeff is chiming in, so we really appreciate that. But yeah, so Jeff teaches that class. He does a great job. Our students love it. And he's also in the process of developing a series of classes for entrepreneurship. So again, this is just one of the efforts that our department's doing to really capitalize on the excitement that our students have about either starting a new business or pitching just like a new idea. Like my students get super excited when I talk about Shark Tank in my class, and I use Shark Tank clips when they pertain to agriculture in my class, and my students love that. And it seems like that's really what they're anchoring on, and Jeff is gonna help us build that sort of notoriety within our department, and our students are just really excited about these opportunities.
Yeah, I've had Jeff teach in the food product development class that I teach, and students love him. He's got lots of energy.
If we could all be Jeff, life would be great.
Yeah. Let's see if Jeff gives me a comment back. All right, well, I think we're about at time, so that we'll have time to do the changeover. So I'd like to thank the panelists and invite everybody to stay on for the next set of presentations. And so Therese or Job, are you going to kick that off?
Yes, in fact, we'll pause the screen for just 2 minutes before Mike White comes on with the next group. Thank you so much for all your insights and participation. Okay, I'll be happy to introduce the next group here. Mike White, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. All right, this is my first time moderating anything on Zoom, so just be forgiving is all I can say. So my name is Mike White. I'm Associate Dean for Academic Programs and Faculty Affairs here in CFANS, and I'll be moderating this, this particular time here. And I've got 3 panelists, and let me just see if I can go through a little bit of their introduction quickly. We have John Finley. He's a National Program Leader for Human Nutrition Agricultural Research Service in the USDA. We have Janice Rueda. She's Vice President of with Nutrition Science Business Development for ADM, connects marketing, business development, and works in the research division. And then we have Aimee Tritt, who's a clinical dietitian, nutritionist at Hennepin County Medical Center, and a food science nutrition lecturer. So that's where we're at. And this particular session is looking into how do we connect disciplinary learning with the development of transferable skills. And I was going to ask if that was my quick introduction, but do any of the panelists want to give any more of their own background before we move into some questions? No, everybody's good? All right. So I think that there's a couple things, or there's a number of issues at hand that we would like to discuss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read or put out there about 3 or 4 questions, and then I'm going to ask the panelists to begin to address those, if that's okay. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Are we excited? Oh yeah, I can see. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for smiles and excitement. Okay. All right. So let's see here. The first questions that I'd like to ask is, you know, what does the profession, or do the professions, because you represent a number of them, what does the profession need from our students, and what do they want the students to bring to the workforce? So that's the first one. Do you mind if I list through 4 and then have you address the ones you want? All right. The next one would be, the next question is, what skill sets do our graduates need in order to be prepared as new professionals, and then to be able to evolve with the profession, especially considering the breadth that these professions cover. Another question would be is, how do we get students to think bigger, like think global, food systems, One Health, equity and justice, but also be able to bring that ability down to smaller individual situations where they might be giving individual dietary recommendations or something like that. And the fourth question is, how does your clinical work shape what you do in the classroom? So I would ask, especially this might go to Aimee, but how does your clinical work shape what you do in the classroom, and what skills do you think students need and need to learn in order to be successful practitioners? So I've laid out the field, I've plowed it, I've fertilized it, and now I need you guys to make it grow. So who wants to speak first? Do I pick you? All right, Janice, you started talking, so there you go.
Well, so I guess I'll start with the first question, or the second. They're kind of the same. From an industry perspective, I think one of the most important skills to have as someone joining the workforce, but then in order to grow across, different disciplines, is a really good, effective means to communicate, both in writing, but in speaking, and then also being able to translate complex scientific concepts, in nutrition or agriculture or whatever, into language and a communication style that's easy for your audience to understand. And so in business, a lot of times that's going to be people with non-technical backgrounds, and in particular, business leaders, or, just the general public at large.
Thank you. That's very helpful. John, you started to speak. Go.
I'll add in that I think a major skill is the ability to understand the problems and the objectives and priorities in areas that are not your particular focus. You've got to be able to see a big picture, and this is really important in the area of food, because food spans the gamut. Nutrition and food span the gamut from production agriculture to environmental science to consumer and socioeconomic research to public health. And you've got to be able to see the big picture, because quite often the correct answer is not a maximization of any one of those areas, but finding the sweet spot where you maximize the most of everything.
Oh, that's excellent. That's very daunting. Yes, please go ahead, Aimee.
I think I'm going to build off of both what Janice said and what John said, and talk about communication skills to begin with. And I teach a nutrition education and counseling course here at the U. And, one of the first skill that we worked on this semester was active listening and reflective listening. And so just how to really absorb what someone's telling you. And I think, that is transferable not only to a clinical setting, but really, to any professional setting. In interviewing for a position, it's really important to be able to, mirror back to the person who's interviewing you, like exactly what they're looking for and what you can bring to solve their problem. And, oftentimes I think nutrition students, they think about, specifically patient-focused things, but having good listening skills and good communication skills can be applicable in so many different settings.
That's excellent. Yeah, these, all of your questions are kind of, well, they make me want to ask, as in my role. So when you see students graduating from food science and nutrition, what skills would you want more of that maybe they aren't coming out with? Because I'm not sure. I'm hearing some broader ideas about what we need to be able to do as a professional, how we need to be able to look at things from a global perspective. Whole systems perspective, and then also, listen well and all those things. So what do our students come out with? What should we be focusing on at the university to try to give skills to our students?
So one of the things is, the term food systems has become something that's bandied around quite a bit, and I think in a lot of cases we don't really have a concise definition for that, and it's broad, and we talk about the need, and I just spoke about that, the need for understanding other areas and being broad. But the other thing that you have to have is you have to be grounded in a particular skill and discipline. You can't just be a generalist. A generalist, you're not going to maybe I should rephrase that. You can be a generalist, but you have to have a particular skill that you come from. And I think all of us have come from one particular skill that we really learned and we really understood, and then we built off from that. We learned many other things from that, and in the end we became generalists, but in the beginning we weren't. You've got to start with a skill set.
Yeah, and just to build off of that, and we're laughing, John and I have known each other for quite a while. I don't have a whole depth of knowledge in any one specialty, so I am the generalist to be sure, but I'm very well grounded in molecular biology and epidemiology. So with that foundation, but from a perspective of a student, entering the workforce and coming into industry, one of the really great skills to have when it comes to understanding and participating in the, these systems types approaches to problem solving is number one, initiative. And then number two, understand what you don't know. And one of the biggest recommendations that I can make from a career perspective is to find yourself some really good mentors in the fields of interest that you have. And, you know, for me personally, that was Dr. Finley. You know, when I first started, I had no experience in the food industry. And, you know, so he's been really great in not only introducing me to people, but sharing his knowledge and giving me ideas for, you know, things to, you know, so leverage other people's experience and skills when you don't have them. And, you know, you'll find that your set of skills, you know, magnifies tremendously in a very short time if you work at it.
I love what you just said, Janice, about knowing what you don't know. I think, especially in the field of nutrition right now, that is such an important message. You know, we're kind of a young science, and you know, there's research going in so many different directions, and I think sometimes I see new practitioners entering the field with very, very strong opinions. And it makes it a little bit hard to, you know, to increase your knowledge base if you're convinced that you already know everything. So that would be one thing that I would echo. And then one other thing that I was thinking of when we were talking about, you know, seeing the big picture. I think it was Dr. Finley who said something about the big picture earlier, and it stuck in my brain. But in a clinical situation, it's a challenge to see both the big picture and the really small picture. So, you know, the big picture might include someone's access to food, their food environment, you know, where they fit within a local food system. Whereas the small picture might be, you know, what personality traits do they have that might make them more suited to one approach or another. And so a challenge, and one I think we should focus more on, when I'm trying to focus more on in my courses, is being able to see both of those things simultaneously.
Oh, yeah, this is really excellent. I think, so it sounds like, just to summarize, we have, you know, you got to be a good disciplinarian as a foundation, and then you should network and look for mentorship to broaden out what you know. And then to come in with some humility that you know, there's a lot you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And your goal as a professional is to try to understand that deeper and come up with different, you know, the correct or a better approach forward. Does that summarize things at all for you guys, or what did I just offend anybody? You know, sometimes if I don't offend somebody, I'm not doing my job. So go ahead. Yeah.
I'd like to add one more thing. I think there's one more thing that you that science sometimes really forgets, and you need a degree of creativity, because often the problems, well, not often, the most intractable problems are ones that people have hit over and over. And I like research. I like in research too, you have this massive wilderness that you have to put a road through. And so you take a bulldozer and you're going through the wilderness and you hit a big rock wall. Well, you can back that bulldozer up over and over and smash it into the rock wall. And I've seen many people do that. And in the end, the bulldozer, which is their career, is what gets smashed. The creativity part of it is you find an alternate way around that obstacle. And I think that is something that really has to be emphasized in research, and especially in the area of nutrition, where our previous, I heard in a previous talk, someone mentioning, well, obesity's been around so long and we haven't done anything about it. We've got to think creatively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so I would just add to that too, because again, creativity is how we solve problems in the world, right? And in order to foster creativity, I think it's really important to expose yourself to as much of a diversity of experiences as is possible. And that's one of the great things about being a student, is you've got time and opportunity to do a lot of that. And, you know, so it's really, you know, taking those art classes you took and the history classes you took and exposure to, working in a field and doing clinical work with patients. They might seem like totally disparate opportunities at the time, but I guarantee at some point in your future career, you'll be sitting there and you'll have an aha moment that combines all of those experiences into a really creative opportunity to approach a problem differently.
Yes, Amy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, especially I love this focus on creativity. And I think, sometimes it doesn't occur to students what that might look like in a clinical setting. But when I was thinking just now that, for me, creativity looks like understanding that the solution might not be what you expect. That, we sometimes have ideas about, well, everybody just needs to eat this way or everybody just needs to eat that way. And, if we are really looking at both the big picture and the small picture, like I was talking about earlier, sometimes our solutions are only appropriate for the one person that we're working with. And each person's solution might look really, really different. And I think having a creative mindset allows people to come up with those solutions.
But I remember a talk I heard from a scientific ethicist one time, and the ethicist was talking about bias in science, and everyone tries to say, well, we aren't biased. We look at our data and we go with the data. Well, remember, there is an infinite universe of possible problems. We have chosen one. So right there, you have incredibly biased what your answer will be. And then when we do research, we seldom have a 180-degree possibility that it's either this or it's that. No, it generally is a vector a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left. So there's tremendous bias. And this is where the creativity and the big picture comes in. You've got to decide what is that important problem you're going to work on, with the understanding that you've already set what the potential answers will be just from the very beginning of choosing that particular question.
Yeah, that's profound. I think that I really resonate with this in so many ways. I think it is exactly what a university like ours can do in our college, because it does expose people to different experiences. I've taught a study abroad course that has a lot of nutrition and food science students in it, and it just broadens that mind. And I think it adds this humility or this ability to either admit, okay, I have pre-biased this, or I may not have the answer, when a lot of people, especially earlier in their career, think they have the answers. They came through, a great degree program and they have the answers. And this is just really, I love this because it's exactly, I see it in my career path. I can hear it in yours, and I think it's really inspiring. So yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the clock, and I think that we're supposed to at some point open it up to see if there's any external questions from people. And I was going to look to Meredith to see if she was monitoring anything, or if there were questions that for the panelists here.
Hi all, I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A or in the chat.
Okay, so that means we get to keep talking. So, I brought up the idea of study abroad, and I think I heard a couple of you bring up, some of the, what I'll call the general or liberal education kinds of things, arts and other perspectives. What would you, you all have fabulous experience. If you were mentoring a student, and I know this is probably it's not fair to ask, but what would be the most important thing you'd tell them that they really should be focusing on while they're here in college? Is it getting that general education? Is it becoming a good disciplinarian? Is it, because we're hearing it all, right? And a student might be saying, how am I going to do all of that? In my time here at the university in CFANS, but
I think it's become difficult. And it's become difficult because we have a new paradigm, especially in the area of nutrition, where we need to see this huge big picture, but we're stuck with a system that still values reductionist approaches. And we're stuck with university systems, government systems that still silo the research, silo the approaches. And so it is very difficult. As far as a student, what I would say, I do think, I said this in the beginning, you've got to be grounded in a skill, but you've got to be able to somehow see the big picture. And that may take work on the part of the student, because I'm not sure, you know, I've looked at a couple of places that have food systems groups and not departments yet, but you know, groups, and they all have something different. None of them really encompass the big picture. So I think it's really going to take a lot on the part of the student.
Okay. To build on that, another thing that, you know, we find in industry, and particularly in my job, because again, my job is all over the place. I don't work in one specific field. I work, you know, across an entire huge company of different skill sets. And, you know, so for me, I'm not interested in someone coming in who knows the answers, because there's a million answers out there. My value, you know, would be derived from someone coming in who can ask the questions. And so if you can ask the questions that will get you to the next step in a, you know, and build that, you know, systemic approach to solving a problem, that is terrifically valuable. And so like in an interview, or when we're sitting around in workshops trying to approach problems, you know, no one's, you know, shooting out answers to anything. We're all looking at what kinds of questions do we need to be asking, and which questions are not worth our time, and which questions are going to lead us to, you know, a solution that's meaningful.
Thank you. Gee, I don't mean to do it, but it looks like we are 2 minutes over time. So, Aimee, is that okay? Did you have something burning? Okay. And I did see a question or two pop up, but I don't know how you want to handle those, Therese, but I think we do need to move to the next thing, don't we?
Yes, we do. We'll find a way to answer those, either to those people or on the event website. Thank you all so much. These are some great